Hey, I'm going to do a quick breakdown of Nam Lee's love and honor and pity and pride and compassion and sacrifice. When you're quoting it, you don't need to use a whole name. You can just use love and honor and pity, or even just love and honor by Nam Lee. And so, what you need to be doing is picking a couple of the techniques that Nam Lee uses and then stylistically incorporating that into your own writing. And he's got some really great images that he uses that we can have a quick look at. So, just going into it from the outset, there's like, there's quotes that obviously illustrate the distance he has from his cultural heritage. He's got this relationship, really strained relationship with his father, with his past, and also like kind of emulated in the struggle he has with his own writing. So we'll get to that in a second, because that's really valuable to look at how he reflects on the process of writing, or writes about writing. But let's have a look at the way that he's describing the rain here. So, I twisted over the side of the bed and cracked open the window. The sound of rain filled the room. Rain fell on the streets, on the roofs, on the tin shed, across the parking lot. Really great example of tricolon there. Rain fell on the streets, on the roofs, on the tin shed, or even just anaphora, or the repetition of the on the. But the fact that it's 3 times makes it tricolon. And then the parking lot, like the drumming of 1,000 fingertips, everything smelled of wet leaves. So you've got that simile there. You've got the smell, the olfactory imagery, which creates a sense of kind of dampness and oppression. So, whenever you pick an image to describe, you want to use it to illustrate the atmosphere or the tone that you're trying to create. And here he's using the rain to illustrate a sense of kind of like, dampness and kind of oppression, whereas you could use the rain to illustrate the complete opposite. If you're describing, I don't know, rain in spring or something, or like in summer, it could be a soothing thing or what have you, but that's not what he's doing here. But, having a look at that writing style that he's got is really valuable. You've got some, here we go, pathetic fallacy, the wet leaves sort of, actually, no, I'll delete that one. Pathetic fallacy is when the weather reflects, is basically a personification of the weather. So it should be more like, the clouds roared, or the thunder roared, or something. That would be pathetic fallacy, because the thunder isn't actually roaring. It's just making whatever sound it's making, but a roar is more of a human characteristic. And then, in terms of the effect of that, pathetic fallacy is going to be creating some kind of atmosphere. Again, in that situation, it would be like aggression or anger or that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure he does use pathetic fallacy somewhere else, but that's not quite pathetic fallacy. I think olfactory imagery is much better. And then, the way that he does flashbacks, that's really good. Let's hop down here. Again, flashback. I found myself back on a heightened stool with my fingers chasing the metronome ahead and behind. Metronome kind of being like an object or almost like a motif as well. But there's a way that he sort of uses flashbacks to talk about his past and then the present, which is another really good stylistic feature that means you don't have to be talking about all these different events to show that a character has developed from the past to the present. So that's a really good technique that you can use in your own writing. What else? Cool. So the main thing is, like, there's so many different ones, there's a bleak view here. There's, actually, yes, I want to talk about this one. So this is where he's talking about the process of writing, and why this is so valuable is that a lot of the Module C questions do have something to do with the power of language. Okay. So if you can incorporate some kind of motif into your writing that is to do with creation or language. And so what I mean by that is, writing is a process of creation. Art is a process of creation. Music is a process of creation, maybe poetry, even like, movies or images, film, photographs, like, anything that sort of is a means of communication or representation is a really good thing to incorporate into your writing, because like I said, that's where a lot of the questions come from. And this is an example of how Nam Lee's done it here. So it says, then in the great spans of time between, I fell back to my vacant screen and my slowly sludging mind. I tried everything, writing in longhand, writing in my bed, in my bathtub. As this last deadline approached, I remembered a friend claiming he'd broken. Anyway, goes on. He's like, talks about his whole struggle there, and it kind of ends on quite a dark note as well, where his writing was destroyed, and he's coming, and then it's very bleak at the end. So the river was behind. So river ends up being this motif as well. The wind was full of acid. In a slow flight of light, I looked away down the river. So really good use of images of the environment. So that sort of, you talk about imagery, or just pick like a motif, like you use particular motifs. You can do the same. Very important to have that in your writing. Like I said, flashbacks, and that look, when you're writing about your own writing, it is called self-reflexivity, but you don't need to be that technical about it. I think if you just talk about the way that he does reflect on the process of writing, that in itself is quite a stylistic technique. And then you can talk about your process of whatever else you've decided to incorporate, whether it be like music or poetry or whatever it is, photography, art, and that is a really, that's a tip that comes from HSC markets, which is to see if you can try and incorporate something, artistic, or something that's, got language, so that you can both link to the question, and lots of questions are about that. And it's also just a really sophisticated way of communicating. So with these set texts, you're not going in and doing a huge analysis on them. You're just picking a couple of their stylistic features and then using those in your own writing.